Hi, this is Mark Carrier welcoming you to another episode of Fakes, Frauds, and Phonies, where we find Han van Meegeren, the master forger, in really hot water. Van Meegeren was indeed in big trouble, and in a very strange predicament. He could either uphold the notion that all his Vermeers were genuine and run the risk of spending a very long time in jail for collaborating with the enemy, or even perhaps facing the death penalty. Or he could confess his trickery and face little more than a slap on the wrist. The choice was easy, and he soon stood up in the courtroom and found himself making the rather odd announcement that he was not a collaborator, but a garden variety crook. No one believed him. Van Meegeren had done such a good job of convincing the world his Vermeers were genuine that the courts initially perceived this admission as a transparent maneuver to avoid severe punishment. "Let me paint a forgery in my cell," he pleaded, and the judge agreed. It worked. The court found Van Meegeren guilty of forgery rather than war profiteering. He received a 1-year sentence, but he died of a massive coronary before serving his time. And how were all Van Meegeren's Vermeers eventually exposed? The lapis lazuli proved to be the weak link. It was expensive, and moreover, was very difficult to obtain in large quantities. Van Meegeren, the story goes, opted to use natural ultramarine, not quite as pricey or rare as lapis lazuli, but still of period for a 17th century work. But Van Meegeren hadn't counted on the manufacturer's dishonesty to increase profits. The maker was cutting the so-called pure natural blue with cheap cobalt blue product that didn't appear on pallets until the 19th century. Chemical analysis revealed that some of Van Meegeren's forgeries contained this product, a clear indication of forgery. What about stylistic considerations in Van Meegeren's forgeries? Not even one of them looks anything like the work of Vermeer, at least not to me. What possessed Bradius to attribute them to Vermeer? I can only think the answer lies in some form of dementia. In my opinion, and that of several contemporary critics, scholars, and dealers, they are insipid imitations, dripping with cheap sentimentality, with far more in common stylistically with Queen Juliana's deer than with a master of 17th century Dutch art. The canons of modern-day beauty and style are difficult to avoid, deadly traps for forgers who attempt to create credible fakes of 16th or 17th century art. Contemporary aesthetics often have a way of insinuating themselves into the style of forgers, no matter how hard they try to avoid that pitfall. Sometimes, as the incongruity of a 17th century movie star, it's just an odd feeling that something is just not right. Get an album of paintings by Vermeer from your local library if you'd like to enjoy initiating yourself to the rudiments of connoisseurship. Leaf through the various works, comparing the authentic paintings with the Van Meegeren fakes, illustrated in the print copy of Fakes, Frauds, and Phonies, available at Amazon. In time, you'll come to ask yourself how Van Meegeren could possibly have fooled Abraham Bradius. You'll note that Van Meegeren's compositions are untypical of Vermeer. In Goering's painting, for example, 4 figures stand, one of whom is a woman in profile who appears close to the forefront, an uncharacteristically simplistic and wooden composition. In genuine Vermeers, his multiple figures confront each other in silent dialogue, or one figure is an observer of the other. But Vermeer most often painted solitary figures, usually women. Occasionally 2 figures are present, one usually a servant, and Van Meegeren's paintings focus on groupings of figures. In Vermeer's work, we observe the scene from a distance and the figure seems natural, not posed. The context in which they sit in space and their relationship to their environment is unique to Vermeer and completely absent in Van Meegeren's imitations. Looking at the body of Vermeer's work, one quickly becomes familiar with the decor of his studio, which he painted repeatedly. Here, a visual vocabulary emerges, which includes the motifs of tiles and tapestry, and the stained glass window, all of which are notably absent in Van Meegeren's work. Vermeer was particularly attentive to the fine details of textiles and clothing, observing and recording inanimate objects with the same attention he paid to faces. In Van Meegeren's work, the figures are draped in monotone sack-like robes. Vermeer's paintings are luminous through his masterly ability to paint light. He He does so with such finesse that he can even evoke a specific time of day. This ability is absent in the comparatively dead monochrome handling of the light by Van Meegeren. Vermeer's genius lay in a mastering of techniques, which translated to an exquisitely rendered vision of the material world, something Van Meegeren never came close to replicating. The success of Van Meegeren's treachery probably stems from two things. First, the disturbing proclivity of some art scholars and sundry other experts of spending an undue amount of time studying the back and sides of a painting or poring over the signature with a magnifying glass, playing amateur sleuth, a signal waste of time in most cases. In fact, they study every aspect of the painting except the painting. The study of a work for purposes of attribution must start with looking at the picture. Stare at it and lose yourself in it until you cannot look at it anymore. Turn the picture upside down to make an objective study of the volumes, the colors, and the rhythm of the lines. Many sycophants were reluctant to question Bradius, but many experts took one look at Van Meegeren's forgeries and walked away, quietly sniggering to themselves. Secondly, Van Meegeren told Bradius what he wanted to hear. Swindlers are masters at uncovering your needs and desires and slanting their sales pitch to create the illusion of fulfilling them. They instinctively know just how to approach you and what angle to take to be credible and make the most extraordinary story sound true. Some cons are so good at this that they manage to persuade cautious and intelligent people to swallow the most astonishing lies, invariably aimed at separating them from large sums of money. Let's give the last word on Van Meegeren to Dr. van der Horst, who, testifying at the former's trial, said the defendant's character leads to sensitiveness to criticism fed by a revenge complex, which explains his anti-social attitudes. Now, I have no wish to play amateur psychologist, but those words resonate with me. They apply to every art con I've ever researched or personally come across. The world refuses to recognize their quote-unquote great talent, so they'll show up everyone, especially those effete snobs in the art world. They'll fool them all. Well, they seldom do. That's it for this week from Mark Luke Carrier. Well, that's it for this episode of Fakes, Frauds, and Phonies. Please subscribe, and if you're a victim of art fraud, please write to me. My email is fakesandfrauds, all in one word, at writeme, WRITEME.com. In closing, please note that a illustrated print version of Fakes, Frauds, and Phonies is available at Amazon worldwide in Kindle or paperback format. So this is your host, Mark Luke Carrier, saying bye-bye for now.